She taught people how to breathe underwater. He learned how to stay silent in the deep. To everyone else, he was sharp and closed off. To the ocean, he was calm. Until she understood the truth. He was not afraid of drowning. He was afraid of coming back to the surface alone. Sometimes love is not about diving deeper. It is about someone taking your hand and saying, "We come back together."
Love Stories Max. Welcome to my channel. Enjoy watching, friends.
Learning to breathe together. I always recognize people like him even before they put on a wetsuit. People who are afraid of depth usually talk too much. They joke, they ask the same questions again and again. They breathe too fast. But James was silent. He stood on the deck of the boat, holding his mask as if it might escape from him. He was not looking at the ocean, but at the line of the horizon. At the place where the bottom disappears. His shoulders were tense, his lips pressed together, and his gaze was sharp. As if he was already prepared to defend himself. "Is this your first time?" I asked while checking the tanks. "No," he answered shortly. "But it feels like the first time every time." I smiled. That is an honest answer. Above the water, he was exactly like that. Closed off, prickly, slightly rude. His replies were brief. His movements were abrupt. He did not laugh at my jokes and did not look me in the eyes when I explained the instructions. And then we dove. Underwater, James disappeared, and someone else appeared instead. His movements became smooth, his breathing even. He stayed close to me, but he did not cling or panic. On the contrary, I felt how grounded he was, like an anchor. When a large manta ray swam past us, he did not flinch. He only turned his head slightly, as if greeting an old acquaintance. I showed him a thumbs up, asking how he was doing. He answered with a circle made of his fingers, meaning everything was perfect. And that was strange. At 20 meters deep, where most people fight fear, he looked calmer than anywhere else. After the first dive, he returned to being himself again. Closed, quiet, sharp in tone. "You did very well," I said, handing him a towel. "Because everything is honest down there," he replied. "Up here," he nodded toward the surface. "There is too much noise." I remembered that sentence. The following days, he signed up only with me. Always silently. Always without unnecessary words. And always perfect underwater. One day the current was stronger than forecasted. Beginners cancelled the dive, but James stayed. "Are you sure?" I asked. "I do not like turning back without a reason," he said. At depth, the current pulled us sideways. I gave a signal to stay closer, and he immediately took my hand. Not tightly, not in panic, just correctly. Underwater, I laughed into my regulator because he showed me a sign saying, "You owe me a coffee," after I accidentally brushed a coral with my fin. When we surfaced, he released my hand abruptly. Closed again. Walls again. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Always," he answered shortly. But I saw how he lingered on the ladder. How long he stood there, staring into the water before climbing back onto the boat. That evening I found him sitting on the shore, shoes in his hands, his gaze fixed on the dark water. "You are not afraid of the ocean," I said quietly as I sat beside him. "I know," he answered. "Then what are you afraid of?" He stayed silent for a long time. Then, without looking at me, he said, "Down there, I am not alone. And up here? Up here, everyone comes back to the surface alone." My heart tightened more sharply than during decompression. I understood everything. His fear was not about depth. It was about returning. From that day on, I waited for him not only in the water. We drank coffee after dives. Sometimes he smiled, awkwardly, as if he had forgotten how to do it. I joked that he was more romantic underwater than on land. He answered that it was easier to breathe there. On the last day, he asked, "Do you always dive with people, and let them go?" "Yes," I said. "And what if someone does not want to come back up alone?" I took his hand, the same way as underwater. Calmly, confidently. Then we come up together. And for the first time, he looked at me as if the ocean was no longer the only place where he was not alone. That evening, the ocean was quiet. Not stormy, just thoughtful. The waves rolled in slowly, as if they did not want to interrupt us. We sat on the sand, our backs resting against warm stones. 2 mugs of tea stood between us. Mine had gone cold because I kept forgetting to drink it. James held his with both hands, as if it might slip away. He was silent for a long time. Not tense. Tired. "Have you ever lost someone, not to death?" he asked suddenly. I turned toward him. "Yes. But tell me your story." He swallowed and looked at the dark line of the water. "I was married," he said quietly. "Lily and I loved the ocean. Not the way you do. Differently. It was a place where we escaped." I did not interrupt him. I barely breathed. One winter we went to the coast. No people. Cold. Beautiful. She wanted to swim. I told her the waves were too strong. She laughed and said it was me who was afraid, not her. His fingers tightened around the mug. She went into the water. I stayed on the shore. And I did not follow immediately. I thought, one more second. One more moment. "James." A wave hit her. Then another. And another. I ran in, but the water had already decided for us. He stopped. I could see his jaw moving as he held the rest back. I pulled her out. People came. An ambulance. She survived. She lived. But, he exhaled, she could never look at me the same way again. "Because you did not go in right away?" "Because I stayed on the surface," he said. "And she was alone." I reached out and touched his fingers. He did not pull away. She left a year later. She said that every time she looked at me, she felt like she was drowning again. And he paused. I started diving. Because underwater, everyone is quiet. There is no blame there. No one expects you to be strong. My throat tightened. "You are not a coward," I whispered. "You were human." He looked at me then. Truly looked. Without armor. "And what if I do not make it in time again?" "Then someone will be there," I said softly. "I will." The wind lifted a strand of my hair, and he instinctively tucked it behind my ear. His fingers lingered longer than necessary. We were very close. I could feel the warmth of his forehead, the salt of the ocean on his skin. "Grace," he whispered. "I am here," I answered. He leaned in slowly, as if afraid the moment might break. Our kiss was not about hunger. It was about permission, about not having to drown. When we pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine. "Thank you for not letting go," he said. "I am a diving instructor," I smiled. "I know how to bring people back to the surface." After the kiss, we did not speak right away. The ocean breathed beside us, steady, patient, as if giving us time. James sat so close that I could feel the warmth of his shoulder through the light wind. He did not let go of my hand, but he did not squeeze it either. He just held it, as if he was afraid that if he loosened his fingers, I might disappear. "You do not have to save me," he said finally. "I am not saving you," I replied. "I am just here." He smiled quietly, almost imperceptibly. "That is scarier than depth." "Why?" "Because depth does not look back at you." I rested my head on his shoulder. The stones beneath us were warm, as if they had saved the day's sunlight for moments like this. "You know," I said softly, "sometimes the hardest dive is not downward. It is into another person." He exhaled slowly. "Are you not afraid?" I thought about it. "I am. But I learned not to run from that fear." We sat like that for a long time. Time dissolved, like salt in water. Suddenly, James leaned down, picked up a small smooth stone, and placed it in my palm. "I always carried stones like this," he said, "when I was in a bad place. To remember that something can be simple and whole. And now I want it to be with you." I closed my fingers around the stone. "Then I will keep it for both of us." The next morning, we dove together. Not as an instructor and a client. As two people trusting each other with silence. Underwater, James was calmer than ever. He did not hold on to me. He swam beside me, and at some point I realized he was no longer escaping downward. He was simply where he felt right. When we ascended, he did not rush. He did not hesitate. He just moved with me, steady and sure. At the surface, he pulled off his mask and laughed for the first time. A real laugh. Slightly awkward, slightly surprised. "What?" I asked. "I thought returning always hurt," he said. "But it can be warm." I touched his cheek. "Because now you are not alone." He leaned in and kissed me again, braver this time, but still gentle. Like someone who was no longer afraid to breathe at the surface. And I understood then. Some people enter our lives not to learn how to dive, but to learn how to come back together. Our house stands so close to the ocean that sometimes it feels like it listens to the way we breathe. In the mornings, I wake up before James. Always. Not because I have to, but because I am used to meeting the day first. I step barefoot onto the terrace, the wooden floor still cool, the air salty and clean. The ocean stretches out in front of me, calm, almost tender. Without challenge, without threat. I used to think the ocean was movement. Now I know that sometimes it is peace. Behind me, the door creaks softly. James always tries to walk quietly, but I hear his steps before his arms wrap around me from behind. His hands are warm, always warm. "You are awake again," he murmurs into my hair. "I am listening," I say. "To it? To us?" He smiles. I can feel it without turning around. A year ago, he was afraid of returning to the surface alone. Now he makes coffee while singing off-key and laughs when I try to guess the tune. He leaves wet towels everywhere and calls it coastal style. He has learned how to wait, without hiding, without running. Sometimes we dive together. Not often. Not to escape. Just to greet the silence. Underwater, he no longer searches for forgetting. He knows the surface will always be there. Once he told me, "I am not afraid of coming back up anymore. Because I know you are there." I did not answer. I just took his hand. The same way I did the first time. Our mornings are simple. Coffee. Bread with salt. Conversations about nothing and everything at once. Sometimes we are quiet, and the silence does not press down on us. It holds us. In the evenings, the ocean darkens, but it does not frighten us. James stands beside me, looking at the water, and he no longer turns away. I think about how strangely life arranges meetings. I taught him how to breathe underwater. And he taught me that love is not rescue. It is coming home together. And when the waves grow louder at night, he pulls me closer. Not because he is afraid, but because he chooses to stay. We are no longer drowning. We are living.